Jeremy and Alexandria, you want to come up? Okay, Alexandria Blumer is a former special education teacher in the PVPUSD. She is a mother of 2 Palos Verdes students, 1st and 3rd grade. She received her bachelor's degree in liberal studies with a concentration on child, adolescent, and family development from CSU Bakersfield and a master's degree in special education. One of her quotes is, "Test scores are dropping, facilities are deteriorating, patriotism and respect are declining, the material and ideals of our students are exposed to are concerning, and there's an increase of activists and social justice warriors on campus. My goal is to empower and encourage parents to speak up about these issues." Candidate Alexandria Blumer. Jeremy Vanderhal was a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force. Thank you for your service. An experienced leader managing hundreds of people in multi-million-dollar programs. As an engaged father, he has volunteered his engineering expertise at PV schools, including his daughter's preschool, and science fairs. A quote from Jeremy, "We must trust that our elected officials represent us, act as good stewards of public funds, and take appropriate action when incidents occur that put people in danger. Currently, the PVPUSD board ignores some incidents to avoid negative public attention and conducts business behind closed doors. I aim to promote full transparency within the PVPUSD board to regain the public's trust and become an effective governing body." Jeremy Vanderhal, candidate. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is they're each going to give a position statement first. So if you want to go first, Alexandria.
I'm here, but I believe I've been called to do this. A year ago, I attended a group meeting with Kimberly Fletcher, the founder and the president of Moms for America. And I was inspired by her, and she's a force to be reckoned with. And something she said that resonated with me is, we have to start local, and that includes being on your school board. I thought, okay, so that kind of stuck in the back of my mind. And then a few months ago, Kimberly spoke again here, and I feel called to do this. I've been approached multiple times. I'm not a politician. I'm not a statistician. I don't have all the data, but I do have passion. And I will fight ferociously to protect our children's innocence. And something that I've learned along the way since running for school board is we only have about 10% of our families in Palos Verdes that have kids in the district. So we're representing taxpayers. We're representing a lot of people that don't have children in the district. With that said, I'm sure everyone wants to protect our children. So this has been such a learning curve, such a great experience, and hearing all of the concerns. I'll go back to my stance in the kids in the schools. Currently, we're fighting AB 1955 that is challenging parent rights. I believe that it is up to under this legislation, it's up to the student whether they want the school to disclose gender records if they choose to change information. That is terrifying to me. I believe that is a violation of due process of the 14th Amendment. I believe in federal law. I will fight tooth and nail to protect parents' rights and their involvement in their children's education. I am concerned with the clubs that are allowed on schools, on our public school campuses. I'm concerned about the information that the teachers are presenting to our students. I think it's it's disgusting, and quite honestly, it's perverted some of the books. I don't know if you guys have caught wind of what's happening at Malaga Library with it's kiddie porn. It's pornographic, and it's drawn in cartoon form, and it's disgusting. There is no place for that. And I've had people come back, well, they're gonna get exposed to it anyway someday. Well, my 8-year-old is gonna drive a car someday. I'm not gonna hand in my keys tonight, I'm not gonna do that. And so it's my responsibility. It's our responsibility to protect our kids, and it's on our watch. And honestly, I believe the parents should be involved in every single decision in their children's education until they leave for college.
between Alex and Julia. There's not much left to say. So I'll give kind of like the standard 1-minute thing that I say for the benefit of the people that haven't heard me speak before, and then I have some more recent updates. So my name is Jeremy Vanderhal. I'm running for school board. I grew up in LA. I joined the Air Force to be a pilot and a test pilot. I've been stationed all over the country, deployed all over the world. I've led large organizations, hundreds of people. I've been in multinational groups working together towards a common goal, and I've been in charge of programs up to $2.7 billion.
Oh.
And so, but I came back to California because this is my home, and when my wife said that she didn't want to move back to Ohio or DC, which is where I was probably going to move to next, I saluted and said, yes, ma'am, because she's the boss, and I got out of active duty. And we moved to Palos Verdes, which is where she grew up, specifically for the schools. And now I've got a daughter in kindergarten, so for the next 13 years, I've got skin in the game. One of the things I loved about basic training was that it didn't matter where you came from, what language you spoke, what your culture was. We all got the same haircut, we all got the same uniform, we all started on the same playing field. And then from there, based on how hard you worked and some of your just God-given abilities, you rose to your own merits. And that is like a perfect microcosm of America, and that's what I love about America. California has demonstrated to me that they view the world differently. And the way that kind of affects us from a school board level is through the way that schools are funded, through the way that academics are presented and evaluated, and then just the overall environment and culture that is presented in the classroom. So the way I feel about the role of the school board, using my military metaphors, is being the shield and the sword. So just like Julie talked about, when the CSBA comes up with a policy, it's not a law, but go ahead and just go ahead and sign this into your school board policies. You don't have to. So be the shield. Say, actually, no, we're not going to go ahead and rubber stamp that because it's not good for our kids. Then sometimes California takes it a step further, like AB 1955, where now it is technically a law and you have to follow it, otherwise you're in violation of the law, even if it is bad for your kids. And that now takes the sword. You need to go back and fight against California in order to stop that from happening. So that's my standard page. Now let me give you the update of what's happened. So over the last 2 weeks, Alex and I were in 2 different candidate town hall forums. The other 2 candidates only showed up to the first one. I expected there to be differences of opinion, and there were. People view the same facts the same way or different ways and come up with different solutions. That's to be understood. What I didn't expect was to have a fundamental disagreement on basic facts. And the fact that the sitting board president didn't understand some of the basic facts of how the school board worked was shocking to me. Due to the format of the debate, I wasn't allowed to correct her there on the spot. So I created a series of short videos to show how she's just blatantly wrong. So go to my Instagram page, you'll see it. I thought it was pretty funny. The main point too about what Julie was talking about is the reason why they can do this is because they've got this massive machine backing them. So just this week, Ami Gandhi presented that Ben Allen and Almer and Sushi are going to have this big fundraiser for them, $500 a plate, and the whole thing was backed by Ben Allen for Senate 2022. So basically, anybody that's donated to him over the last several years, he hasn't needed to use it because he's basically running unopposed. So he's got this giant, cash trove of stuff, and he spends it on down ballot things. So we're facing down this giant machine, and it takes money. So I know there's lots of things that everybody's spending money on. If you can find it within your means to support us, please do, because every dollar helps.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a couple questions. First to Jeremy. Enrollment has decreased 10%. In prior cycles of reduced enrollment, the district has closed schools and leased out the land to save money. If the bond does not pass, do you sell school property, or will you follow the fiscally sound actions of your predecessors and temporarily lease unused property?
Great question. So a similar question was asked at the debate from the League of Women Voters, and the city board president, the first words out of her mouth were, if you don't pass this bond, you're going to shut down schools and sell the land. her first answer. And I, when it came to my turn, I said, that is the absolute last thing that we need to do. Like, I will put that, if we come to that point, we are in dire straits. So the first part of your question, will I sell schools and shut down land? No. There are many other things that we can do. Hopefully not even necessarily needing to lease them out. The school board did they contracted out a study of what their projected enrollment is going to be over the next 10 years. Statewide, everything is decreasing. People are pulling their kids out of public school. I wonder why. And so, and that's affecting us as well too. The high mark for us was just a little over 11,000 to 12,000-ish. We're down in like now between 10 and 11,000. It's probably going to decrease a little bit, but according to these projections, take them probably with a grain of salt. It's probably going to level off in the 10,000 range. And at that number, we are just barely sustainable at the current level of schools that we have. So I don't foresee the actual need to shut them down based on enrollment. However, if there's a giant facilities failure like there was at Merrill West with the electrical system, our hand might be forced if we don't have the money to do that. I'm sure we'll talk about the money aspect of it later.
Okay. Do you want to add anything to that?
Jeremy covered that.
Pardon?
I think Jeremy covered it perfectly.
Okay.
Closing school is worst case scenario, last option.
HS test scores have shown a significant number of students are being graduated without satisfactory levels of reading, math, and science. To date, addressing the critical problem has not even been agendized by the board. Is that a priority for you? And if so, what will you do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a priority for me. Academics is the pride of our Palos Verdes schools. I think that looking at the curriculum and implementing response to intervention, we need to look at why these programs are failing. I think we also need to look at all of these extra courses that are being introduced to our kids. I'm afraid that we're getting too far away from academics with the CRT, with the gender ideology, anything that takes focus away from academics, that's concerning. So I think that's step one.
Did you, Jeremy, you want to add anything?
So a similar question was asked at the debate, and what Ami Gandhi said was, we have high graduation rates, 98%, which is correct. But what she neglected, and in fact said I was wrong about, and I proved I was right, is that the standardized testing scores for 11th graders show that 20% aren't meeting the standard for English and 30% aren't meeting the standard for math. And so this is a problem, right? How are we having 98% graduation rate, but like one in five is not passing English, and one in three is not passing math? I had to do public math there. I almost failed myself. Okay. So there was just a disagreement. She said that that's not right, and I showed in one of my Fun with Facts videos that yes, in fact, that is. But this is not a new problem. 2 years ago when I ran, this was a talking point back then, and everybody said up and down, yep, we're going to look into that. We're going to look into it, and they haven't. And it could just be, hey, it's 11th grade, kids are kids, they don't want to deal with it. And in fact, one mother called me and reached out and said that she found out from her son after grilling him why he did so poorly. I just answered B on everything because I didn't feel like taking the test. Which okay, I guess that's a technique. But if it really is something that simple, let's find out, because the only way that we really can compare apples to apples, our district to other district, is through standardized testing, because grades can be inflated, passing rates can be inflated to make yourself look good. And if kids aren't taking the test seriously, maybe we need to find a way to incentivize them to take it seriously, because it reflects poorly on our district by having these low numbers.
What specific recommendations would you make to improve the process for potential involvement in reviewing parental involvement in reviewing new curriculum?
So I will give a little bit of credit. Recently, they had one example where they did on the AP US history. They had parents involved in it. But I think that the whole policy and process for it needs to be just maintained at a minimum, or maybe improved. And in fact, Julie kind of made reference to that, like they're trying to change the policy committee, which could then downstream affect how this policy goes back. It could affect the makeup of these boards. So I think on a lot of these committees right now, even when there are even when there are parents on the committee, they are like vastly outnumbered by people that are like handpicked by staff. So we need to maybe think about trying to balance those numbers out a little bit by getting more parents involved.
You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think parent involvement it always comes back to parent involvement. That's what makes this district and this community so special. So as much as we can include the parents in these decisions, I think that's our best chance for success.
Okay, and then the last question I'll ask right now is this is to you, Alexandria, first. PVPUSD schools were built in the 1960s primarily and in need of facilities upgrades. What form of financing would you advocate for upgrades? How would you communicate this with the community?
I personally think that community fundraising can be a very powerful tool for this. We have some very affluent, very generous people in this community, and they want our schools to thrive. They want our facilities up to date. They want the best learning environment for our students. And I think that people would be more willing to donate money directly to the school or the building or the project rather than being taxed on it, because as Julie stated, we can't trust our state with our money. And certainly not our governing school board, with the exception of one member, but she is outnumbered at every turn. So I think community fundraising is probably our best bet at this point.
Yeah, so I'll echo Julie's comments about the bond. She can't advocate one way or the other, and I'm not going to try to convince anybody one way or the other. I'm all about giving everybody the full information and let people decide. I also don't like taxes, and I especially don't like taxes in California, because California views our community in particular as a piggy bank, where they can just take from us and go spend it on their pet projects elsewhere, wasteful or not. The one thing that I will say about a bond, one of the good sides of it, is that it's one of the only flavors of taxes in California that can be spent, that has to be spent locally. So it cannot by law be spent anywhere except here, and it cannot by law be spent on anything other than what's on the list. So obviously the counter arguments are exactly what Charity was talking about, and John too for that matter. It's a lot of money. Seniors can't opt out. The board may or may not have trust issues, and they do. There was one other thing, but I forgot what it is. But there's reasons to not vote for it. But here's the thing: even if you do vote for it, I think if the only thing you do is a bond, it's a Band-Aid, right? We're gonna spend it just like we did 24 years ago, and we're gonna be in the same place that we are right now. So the bond by itself is literally just Band-Aid, and it's not a long-term solution. I think that the next most important thing that we need to do, regardless of whether or not the bond passes for long-term financial sustainability of the squadron, is basically summarized by what John said, is get some of our tax dollars back. So the way that the current operational budget, so the annual budget, so separate from facilities, that's, by the way, a whole side conversation. The way that schools are funded in California is there's facilities and there's operational. Operational is like the annual budget, so like salaries and basic maintenance. But the way that the operational maintenance or the operational budget comes to us is something through the local control funding formula, the LCFF. And the way it works is all of our property taxes that are meant for schools go up to Sacramento, they do their math, and they redistribute it extremely unequally. And so, for example, here in Palos Verdes, we're getting roughly $11,000 per student. In LAUSD, they're getting roughly $16,000 per student, so 50% more. We're at the 12th percentile. All this data is public. You can download it off the LCFF website. I did that, and I ordered it by per student funding. We're at the 12th percentile, so 88% of districts are receiving more funding per student than us. What if we had an average amount? Every student in the entire state gets the exact same amount. That amount that we would be getting compared to what we are actually getting this year is $25 million that we're being shorted. So imagine if we could get even some of that extra per year. That money could be spent on increasing the current, like basically bare minimum that we're spending required by law on maintenance. And if we had more money to spend on maintenance year over year, then in theory, we might not even need a bond, because we've just been able to maintain on a regular basis the facilities, rather than wait for them all to collapse all at the same time and then try to convince the community to fund it again. So I think those two things go hand in hand. So regardless of whether or not the bond passes, if I'm on the board, that's like basically one of the jobs number one that I'm going to try to do, because that's how we sustain ourselves long term.
I'm going to open it up to, okay.
Why can't seniors opt out of this? In the past, my clients and Tony's clients were able to, if they couldn't afford it, they could opt out. When did that change, and why did that change?
So there's a difference between a bond tax and a parcel tax. So for the parcel tax, like Measure M, seniors absolutely can, and if they want to, they totally should. They opt out of it. The reason why bonds cannot have that for two reasons. One, a parcel tax is just a straight number period. It doesn't matter if you have a $5 million home or a $500,000 home. It's that same number. So that's part of it. A bond is relative to the assessed value of your home. The other reason was, so back in the day, in order to pass a bond, you needed a 66 or 67% vote. And one of the California propositions that was voted on 20-something years ago lowered that threshold down to 55%. But with that came a whole lot of protections. So one of them was, the most important one was probably that it required to have a citizens oversight committee. So ostensibly, it's supposed to be concerned citizens making sure that it's not spent poorly. The reality of it is now, because the board picks who's on it, sometimes you can have just a whole bunch of lackeys doing it. So that's why it's important to have good people on the board so that we can actually make sure that people are doing it. But then one of the prices of that was that because of the large amounts of money that's required for it, and what I think what Charity was talking about being able to pay off, because this is not just some extra money that we now can get put into the system that can fluctuate by year. We're taking money out from underwriters of banks, and we owe money back as far as debt service. So if half the population decides, hey, we're not going to pay for it anymore in taxes, now we're left with a debt responsibility. So that was one of the caveats that added to it. So it's two different flavors of taxes. This is a bond, and so you can't have an opt-out versus a parcel tax. You can.
Hi, my name is Gabor Namath. I am also the president of the Republican Assembly Group. I just wanted to mention that. And I also work at Peninsula High School as a wrestling coach. I also graduated there. The schools pretty much look the same. I've been over to Miralest, and I did a wrestling camp over there. I got to see some of the facilities over there. So I'm just wondering, which schools are in need of the facilities funding? I hear Miralest talk a lot. Peninsula's come up, Ridgecrest has come up, Palos Verdes High School's come up. I'm just wondering, is it all the schools, or is it some of the schools, and how bad is it really?
I would say Miralest is definitely top of the list. I taught there, it's been 5 years since I taught there, and it was in bad shape then. And I mean, the asphalt on the basketball courts are cracked, there's gopher holes, it's infrastructure, obviously, the electrical, they lost 3 days of instruction last school year. So I would say Miralest is definitely on top of the list. I haven't toured all of the schools, so I can't rank them. But definitely Miralest would be on top. And as far as a price, I don't know. I'm guessing obviously in the millions, because the electrical modernization is going to be very pricey.
So in the 26 odd page full bond measure, they have a by school project list. So they say, here's all the things at this school that we're going to do if this bond is passed. Or that we'd like to do, and if we run out of money by the bottom one, then we don't do that. What they have not yet done, and it will be the responsibility of whichever board is coming up next, is to prioritize that and come up with the actual plan for how we're going to do it. The actual per project price list also has not been done, because you have to study that out and come up with bids and things like that in order to figure out the actual price list. So that kind of granularity doesn't exist. So the way they came up with this, the overall cost was kind of just based on estimates. So it could go up, it could go down. It depends on a lot of things, but it's also important to make sure that the bids are all blind and sealed, so that we don't know who is bidding on what, and just to remove any chance of impropriety. So we have to do a study to figure out, no kidding, what is the actual prioritized list. Just from anecdotally, yes, Miralest has some problems, because we're still to this day running off of a generator, and it's like thousands of dollars a day just to keep it running. I live near Peninsula High School, and the other day I was driving, and I had to drive through a river of water because there was a main break in the parking lot. Like they had to section out a whole section of the parking lot, and there was like water spewing up. So there's problems, and it could, you know, that particular problem wasn't a problem a month ago. So it will depend at the time. So the level of granularity that you're asking for does not yet exist. The board needs to do that, and it will do that as part of this.
Okay, so first of all, Jeremy and Alexandria, thank you so much for running. I've had a lot of people ask me if I would run, and I'm like, based on what Julie said, H-E-double-L, no. I wouldn't want to do it, and so I'm so grateful that you're both doing it. And I think everybody understands the state funding. I was looking back over Measure R and Measure S. And I went way back into the Daily Breeze to read what they were saying back in like 2004 of how to pass it. They're saying the exact same thing in 2004 as we're saying now. It's all because of state funding. So we keep hearing the same problem over and over and over and over again. And in my opinion, as long as we keep voting, and we vote for the bond, the same thing continues to happen. And then they have this special funding where developers get all of the fees. Right, so there was in 2020, if you watch, Brennan Taronis was discussing the aquarium project that they had over at Malago Cove. And our former superintendent explained that the reason they were using this money to build this science aquarium project was because they had a certain fund where they could only spend that on developers. So they couldn't use that money to fix the roofs. They had to spend it on this other project. So these are things that, like, they're happening over and over again. So to either of you, how would you actually fix this? What would you do to protect our local towns so that we have equal protection under the law? Because we don't have equal protection under the law. Everything's discriminatory. What, if anything, will you do to fix it?
I think looking at our wants versus our needs, I mean, we've got champagne taste on a beer budget right now, it sounds like. For example, we are spending $750,000 on SAGE therapy, and these are not all licensed therapists in our schools, and that is a horrendous waste of money. I think that we could put that money to good use. We have $30,000 on Brain Pop. I think there's a lot of things we can trim down. We pursue, so there's a letter right now to Goodwin, a Goodwin law firm that is, I don't know if they have actually filed suit yet against the state, but they are threatening litigation with the state to reform the LCFF, because as Jeremy went into, he's got the numbers, he gave it all to us, it's not equitable. We need our students, we need to advocate for our students' constitutional right for equity. It needs to be penny for penny. So I would say it's an uphill battle. It's not going to be a quick fix, but that's definitely something I would pursue.
The answer to your question is sue California. Period. And it's a challenge. You can't do it by yourself. So generally speaking, my idea is, and the details of it have not yet been fleshed out. But basically, from that, I said we're at the 12th percentile. What if the 20th percentile and below, we all got together with one unified voice and demanded California fix their LCFF issue? And the reason why I know it works is exactly what Alex said with Goodwin. Just one correction on it. The Goodwin letter was for Proposition 2. And it's fine. So Proposition 2, for those that don't know, is it's going to be on the ballot this November. Whereas I didn't want to say yes or no what you should vote on for the bond, vote your heart for the bond. For Proposition 2, absolutely vote no on Proposition 2. And the reason I say that is because for a couple reasons. Number one, it's a matching only. So if it passes, everybody in the state of California's taxes will go up. But we will only see the benefit of it locally if we also pass our local bond, because it's matching funds. But then, even if that does pass and we do pass our local bond, the rate at which we get matching funds is going to be less than other districts because of the Goodwin letter. So what the Goodwin letter it did was a bunch of districts got together with a law firm and sent this letter basically threatening a lawsuit but not actually doing a lawsuit. And as a result, they adjusted the wording of the Proposition 2, which, oh, by the way, was written by Al Sushi, so you can thank our local representative for this, to say, okay, if you're a wealthy district, you get less money. If you're a not wealthy district, you get more money. So again, this whole means testing that John referred to is already successfully being applied. Like, at least with the LCFF, they use all these proxy things. So it's like they say how many foster kids or how many English as a second language kids, and that number tends to be more in areas of less wealth, but they don't actually say less wealthy. In Proposition 2, due to the Goodwin letter, they specifically just say, they just throw away all like games and they say, yep, if you're wealthy, you get less money. And so that all comes around to say that threatening California works, you just have to have the guts to do it. The formula is, in theory, wide open, but it's a little bit of a black box. And Julie actually went on the similar Capitol convoy recently, and I mean, she could tell you better than me, but basically, she at least both of our representatives talked to her. But one of them said, "Well, you're wealthy, just pass them on because that's what you have to do." And the other one said, "Well, the only way you're going to get anything done is suing California." So basically, both of the representatives that are supposed to represent our interests are not. They are representing their party's interests for sure, but they're hanging us out to dry. And so, they'll only respond to force, because that's just the way it's going to have to work, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Okay, if you have any other questions, unfortunately, you'll have to wait till after and just talk to these guys. Will stay afterwards and answer any specific questions. Julie wanted to take 5 minutes, and then I was going to ask them one last question. We have to be out of here by about 1:45, the latest. Yeah.
Usually by now, but that's okay.
Okay.
This is important.
I took notes while you guys were talking, and I wanted to hit on some stuff, and I'm going to go really fast. So we're talking about closing, selling schools. One of the things I'm really worried about is that our state has now set up this scenario where they've made high-density housing a by-right use on school district property. If we have a Democrat majority school board who's working with the Democratic Party to do what the Democrats want, that's really bad for us. That's not a good option. So think about the consequences of not having a bond to fix schools. If we have to shut schools and we have to figure out how to dispose of our assets, we are in an environment where high-density housing has been incentivized. It's being pushed by all sorts of entities. And that's a real risk. It's not fear-mongering. That's a legitimate risk. All I can do is provide information to people and a prediction of what I think might happen. I don't like what's going to happen. Another thing, during the last election, I think you remember this, we kept hearing, because we kept saying, oh my God, the financial shape of the district is horrible. What did we hear back?
It's fine.
It's great. They're fear-mongering.
There's so much money, we don't know what to do with it.
So let's find those clips and play them on repeat. Why did you, board president, tell us that we were in great financial shape? And now you're telling us that if we don't pass this bond, we're going to have to close schools and sell our property. But that seems a little inconsistent. What happened? Okay, CASP, the CASP testing, I think you sort of covered this, but when I've investigated and dug in the district, they tell me, oh, well, those scores don't really matter. People don't really take it seriously. So that's the excuse there. In terms of parental rights in AB 1955, I just gave a long presentation to Lincoln Club in Orange County, so I could go on forever. But I do want to point you to a decision that came out in the Chino Valley case last week or 2 weeks ago. Rob Bontar, Attorney General, is full of it. He's going around and claiming victory. He lost. It's not a victory for him. He got an injunction against the old policy that they had already rescinded, and they replaced it with a new policy that requires a notification to all parents if the official or unofficial records of their child has been changed. That's not discriminatory. That was upheld. And then the judge went on for 50 pages about the importance of parental rights and parental involvement in the decisions involving their children. And he said, he mentioned one case, Brecky versus Willis, which categorically rejected the absurd suggestion that a child's freedom of association trumps a parent's right to direct and control the activities of a minor child. Then it goes on to say, essentially, I'll summarize because I know you need to go. Parents need to know and exercise their rights. So Education Code 51101, Meg and Charity at First have a lot of good resources on that. The Protection of People's Rights Amendment, which is a federal law. FERPA, which is a federal law, which gives you the right to obtain all of the records of your children. all of the education records of your children. Our district and others in the state are hiding the confidential student support document in counseling notes, which they cannot legally do. That's what we're doing. That's what I was told by our superintendent. Our lawyers are telling us that's fine. It's not fine. It's not legal. So make it a practice. Tell your friends, make it a practice every 6 months or every school year, request all of your children's education records and demand them under Education Code 51101 for BUD and the PPRA. You are entitled to those under law. I don't want to go on a tangent, but I do want to tell you, I spoke with a mom from Santa Clarita. She found out that her daughter was transitioned at school via social media. She asked the school for records. They refused to give them to her. She hired a lawyer. 2 years later, they write a memo. Atkinson Andelson, who also represents our district, wrote a memo to the district in which they said, parents are not entitled to these records. Children have a constitutional right of privacy from their parents at school. There is a confidential relationship between the government school and a child that excludes the parent. But in this case, we will give you the records because you already know. So we're not outing the kid. This is a memo from our law firm. Yeah, they're on the agenda on Wednesday. So, okay, and then let me just burn through the rest. A new case was filed today against Encinitas by First Liberty about opt-outs. They said it's a violation of the free exercise clause of the First Amendment to not allow families to opt out of gender ideology instruction. That case involved, no, it's a good case. It's a case, the plaintiffs are in the right. The district is in the wrong. This is the district where they read My Shadow is Pink in their Buddies program, where they had the 5th graders read it to the kindergartners and then draw pink shadows for the kindergarten children after the family had already opted out of gender ideology instruction. Let's see. I have asked to agendize a lawsuit against the state. I asked on June 24th. It's still, if you look at the future agenda items on our agenda for Wednesday, you'll see it there. There's no date for it. I suggested that we do that and approve it before the bond goes on the ballot, because we need to do it regardless. And then, let's see. I asked the district to tell me, how many full-time employees do we have providing mental health counseling in school? 50. We have 50. And then we add on a SAGE contract for an additional $1 million. I still have no idea why we're doing that. It doesn't make any sense.
How many security officers do you have on campus?
We have 2 school resource officers, 2 SROs, and we need a director of security to actually implement a safety plan, because I am not confident that we are handling safety adequately. Thank you very much, and feel free to contact me if you have any more questions. Thanks.
Before you go, we really appreciate everything that you're doing on behalf of students. Okay, last question, and go ahead. Can you help?
Yes, the one thing that I wanted to suggest, I think Alexandra, you're the one who first brought it up, but how about if we begin to have, for the alumni of the Palos Verdes schools, and try to use them also for part of our legacy? And I think that not only would a lot of parents sign into that, but a lot of kids are now at a point where they might as well. We probably should start a legacy.
I think that's a fantastic idea. A legacy club, have the alumni donate directly to the schools. That's a great suggestion. Thank you. Is that Nancy?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Nancy.
Okay. Everyone has one thing that ignites you and inspires you to jump into action. In this case, whether it be curriculum, test scores, class size, PVPUSD facilities, teacher training, what was your one thing, your highest priority that brought you here today as a candidate for school board?
For me, it's transparency and accountability, because that covers everything. The purpose of the school board is to represent the interests of the entire district, but particularly parents. And the only way that you can know for sure that the board is in fact doing that is if they hold their meetings out in public, as they are required to by law, according to the Brown Act. The current board president uses what should be very small carve-outs for things that can and are allowed to be behind closed doors to bring in much more into closed session that should not be. And my personal opinion is that the reason is because it would look very bad for her and people that agree with her if they talk about it in open session. And so because there's, number one, an election happening very soon, but just in general, they don't want to sully their own names because I think if they knew that if people saw what they were actually doing, then people would be less inclined to vote for them. So my pledge, and so this, and it was interesting, at the last, at the debate that she did show up to, she said that she was proud that she never brought any divisive or controversial topics into the boardroom. And my response to that is like, look, it's not your choice. Things will happen that are divisive and controversial, and by hiding them behind closed doors, you don't make them go away, or just not talking about them at all, you don't make them go away. You have to face them head on and bring them out for everybody to see. Because if you react to it and deal with it poorly, they can and should judge you poorly for it. And that is, they know that they will be judged poorly, so that's why they either don't talk about it at all or talk about it behind closed doors. So my pledge is, even if it's divisive, even if it's controversial, it will be out in the open so that you can all judge me. And if I do a bad job, I would expect you rightly to complain to me, and I will either fix my way or you will vote me out of office. That's the whole point.
So what ignited me to run for school board is protecting my kids' innocence. There was an incident a year ago that happened at my son's school. It wasn't in his classroom, but it was a blatant multiple education code violations. And when I approached the principal about it, I was alarmed that he wasn't alarmed. And I showed up to a board meeting, and then I start digging in a little bit deeper. And then watching the laws and the policies in California evolve, it terrifies me. So my kids, all of my students, I call them my kids, I am a former special education teacher, so I'm not doing this just for my kids, but for all of our kids, because once that innocence is gone, it's gone, and I feel like it's incumbent upon us to protect them. So with that said, there have been many things that have come to light, and it blows my mind. Every time I hear Julie speak, my jaw is on the floor. I cannot believe what a dumpster fire our board is. God bless Brenna and the people behind the scenes that really do such a phenomenal job. It is a thankless job. One thing I did want to bring up really quick, I noticed a comment on Nextdoor yesterday. Someone had said that the only board candidate opposed to the bond is married to a real estate developer. I am the only candidate that's married to a real estate developer. My husband, all of our projects and investments are in Bakersfield. Most of them are in Bakersfield, Kern County. We have a couple out-of-state projects. We have no intention of buying land, developing land in Los Angeles County. We moved to Palos Verdes because we love it here. It's perfect. We don't want to change it. We want to preserve it. So in case any of you hear some misinformation about that, I am an open book. Please check out my website, blumerforpv.com. My email's on there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you both for being here today, and we know it's an uphill battle, so everyone, if you can support them financially or boots on the ground, please do so, because following in Julie's footsteps, we really need their support. Okay? All right.
I just want to let everybody know there are 2 seats open, so vote for both of them. It's not just 1 seat, it's 2 seats. And if both of them are elected, Julie and these 2 guys over here will be the majority. Yes. They will make the decision.
All right, thank you again. Best of luck to you.
And Julie